Welcome back, everybody, to the Success Partner Podcast. I am your host, Daya Naef, and today I have in the studio Mike Thompson. Mike is a forensic investigator. He's also into a certified cryptocurrency investigator. We were talking about that a little bit before we started recording the show. And then he's also from the UK, now living in Texas. So if any or all of those things is interesting to you, all of those things is interesting to me. I just want to welcome Mike to the show and have him introduce himself.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, thank you for the introduction. Mike Thompson. I'm the CEO for Bearden Investigative Agency here in Dallas. And we do a lot of different types of investigations for law firms throughout the US and abroad as well. But we're based out of Texas. So,
what are your favorite things about your work?
I like the variety, to be honest, of the work itself. It's super interesting because, I know it's kind of cliched when people say no day's the same, but it's really true in this field. You could go from one day someone just wanting a letter delivered to someone that's difficult to find, to dealing with, a really interesting wrongful death with weird circumstances and, that takes you all over the world. So it's just a super diverse and interesting field, and we get to work with some really skilled people as well. There's some skilled experts in the field. So
interesting people that don't want to be found. What's the most unusual place you've found someone who didn't want to be found?
Actually, the most difficult one, I would say, was there was a guy who was set to inherit a lot of money, and he was just impossible to find. And it's actually how I ended up in the Provisors Network, was the success on this one. We found him just basically under a bridge in San Antonio, but it was a long task of tracking him down, interviewing people that knew him, talking to other people within the homeless community, and eventually just a lot of canvassing of those areas to find the guy. But he eventually got reunited with the wealth, and hopefully found himself out of that situation eventually. So it was a pretty neat one for me, I thought.
It's very interesting. I love cold case files, and they'll have missing persons, and they don't even know who they're looking for. And I mean, it's very dedicated. It's a very dedicated line of work. So what got you into all of this?
I always like to say I just like poking around in other people's business, but it's not really true. I started off in the UK as a police officer. It was a career I'd been interested in from high school, and once I got into that field, I found that it came very naturally to me. In the UK, you have to have good communication skills. Really, we don't carry firearms. We deal with the public on a community level, and so a lot of your work and success is done by being able to talk to people. And weirdly, I just ended up with an opportunity for a career break, and a chance to come over to the US and do some work over here. And I took that opportunity with both hands. Ended up in New York, which for me at the time was kind of fun. I just spent some time in New York, and I was working for a couple of the Fortune 500 companies up there, where they were interested in some training programs that I'd written, and I was teaching and training about investigations, diversity and inclusion, and racial profiling and stuff like that within the investigative field. And then I met my wife, and my wife brought me to Texas because I had to meet her father at some point. And when I landed in Texas, I felt like I'd been born in the wrong place. I was like, wow, I think I'm finally home. And in that process, I met the owner of the company here at Bearden, and we hit it off. And I eventually came on board and ended up it's just kind of by accident into the private investigations world, but it was a very natural fit. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. So when people ask you if you're from Texas, you say no, but I got here as soon as I could.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and most people, when they ask me where my accent's from, I usually say West Texas and see how they react first.
I love that. That's awesome. Oh, well, so you went through some training as well and interviewing. I know communication was a big part of your early career and always in our careers, no matter how far we are into them. But you actually did some sort of training here, the Wicklander, Zelensky, and peace interviewing methods. How did you decide on that? How do you use them?
Yeah, so the peace method is it's a cognitive interview technique that's used in the police in the UK. And I really enjoyed it because it was good for witness interviewing, and suspects are a little bit different type of interview. They tend to clam up and not say anything, and it's more of an interrogation than an actual interview. But with witnesses, it's much more about helping them recall an event and recreate that event, and putting them back in that scenario. And I really like the science behind the cognitive interviews. Um, when I moved to Texas, because not Texas actually, New York, the companies in New York, they were very familiar with the U.S. Police techniques, and when it came to dealing with offenders, I guess, because they were dealing with internal investigations, so most of those involved an
Mhm.
interrogation. So the interrogation method was more useful in the U.S. corporate sector. So I I went through the Wicklander Zulawski training for that, and that's an interview and interrogation technique, and it's kind of broken down into steps that I I mean, it works really well. It's very, very successful interview technique out here. I just had a hard time adapting to it from, the piece interviewing, because um, when you do the piece interview technique, it's much more about listening and
Mhm.
prompting, whereas the Wicklander one is more about. Um, I found it's more about talking and reading the reactions of the person in front of you, and kind of, you know, um, helping them to open up in a different way, I guess. So I kind of ended up using a technique that was somewhere in the middle when I was doing it, and it worked well for me. And you kind of take the best elements of both things, I think, and sometimes that's just the way it works for you. And that's the thing with interviewing. You're dealing with
Mhm.
humans, and you just never know. You never know how they're going to react, and half of the battle is making them feel comfortable in your presence. So.
Yeah, makes sense. Absolutely. And let's see. Oh, we talked about the crypto. We just talked about that for just a second. Tell us more about what that even is. Crypto forensic investigating.
Yeah, so as a cryptocurrency, like a forensic investigator for cryptocurrency, it's essentially what your role is usually some element of tracing and identification, and you do it in a very systematic way, and that's where the forensic part comes in. And forensic really just means using a methodology, a systematic methodology to get to the conclusion, and that's why it's the term's used across a bunch of different fields. So um, the cryptocurrency side, there's not a lot of work there yet, because it's still an emerging field. But you're seeing a lot of scams, a lot
Mhm.
of victims of various different cryptocurrency things. But you're also starting to see elements within normal people's lives of like this, what we're calling the digital estate.
Okay.
It's kind of the estate of assets that they're building up in the cryptocurrency world, and being able to help, especially when there's an asset division in a law case, being able to help the lawyers identify, a, are there digital assets, and b, how much are they worth, and really kind of understanding how to track them down as well is a big part of the role. And then the final part is being able to break it down to a jury who might have no knowledge of cryptocurrency in a way that makes that whole thing more understandable. So
Okay.
this is a very technical field, and if you can break it down to a layperson, then that's half the battle, I think.
Yeah. It's, as I said, you said you didn't have much work in it yet, but I think it's coming. It's crypto gets
Yeah,
rises and falls in popularity, but it will definitely be here to stay.
Yeah, I think it's going to be here for the long haul, and it's a shame that there's so many because it's such a speculative
Mhm.
field at the moment. There's so much opportunity for people if it's done the right way, but it also creates a hell of a lot of opportunity for the criminals. And there's a really big scheme at the moment that you hear about, and it's been around for a couple of years, but you hear about a scheme called pig
Mhm.
butchering, and the reason they call it that is it's like you're fattening up the pig for the
Mhm.
slaughter, and the pig being the victim, and they'll literally ask them to invest a bunch of money into the crypto scheme. They'll show them elements that make it look like they're making money. They might even send money back to them to make them feel comfortable that they can withdraw it, and then all of a sudden they'll invest more money, right? So because they think they're making money, and that's now they've put their whole life savings into it, and they'll say, "Well, it's time to withdraw it." And when they go to withdraw it, the crook will say, "Well, you have to pay taxes before the
Mhm.
withdrawal because this is the
Mhm.
process in these type of transactions," and that's just them trying to
More
eke out
money.
that extra bit of money, and you're never going to get it back at that point. I mean, you're never going to get it back the moment you send it in these scenarios, but um, at that point, it's just you're just waiting for them to cut off communication, and and we've seen clients who have lost anywhere between $250,000 in a transaction like that to multiple millions of dollars, which is, devastating for some people.
That's definitely, it's a lot of money. I think there was a 60 Minutes or a Dateline or something that came out on that. And it's like, be wary of people contacting you, especially like through WhatsApp or something like that, where they've gotten your contact information through WhatsApp and just started
Yeah.
being friends with you. They want to be friends with you first, and then they're like, "Oh, but wait, I have this great opportunity. Would you send me whatever, something small?" And then it does eke up. So,
Mhm. Yeah, it often starts like that. As like certainly with like I would say older men tend to be the victim because they end up on these they maybe got looking for a new partner after a failed marriage, but they're still pretty wealthy, and they end up in this like it's essentially like a romance
mhm.
scam. It starts off like as a nice communication, and then before you know it, they're asking for money, and you know it's it's the long game, I guess. It's the long con, as they would call it. So
Wow. Yeah. Be careful, folks out there. There's your public service announcement for the day. Don't send people money that you've. Yes. Great. Let's see. What do you do for fun?
um yeah, there's a good one. That's a good question. I actually so we have a little ranch here in Texas, just out in the country. It's about 2 hours west of Dallas, and I'm not gonna lie, I love driving around on my tractor. I think it's that's a lot of fun. My wife says it's when I look like I'm at my happiest,
Oh,
when I'm reaching around on that thing. Um, I like to hunt and fish. That's kind of fun being out here as well. We're right on the Brazos River,
okay.
so I can just go out my front yard and fish if I like. Um, and then my wife and I, we would probably describe ourselves as foodies. We like nice, good, trying new restaurants, eating good food, and and we I guess everybody loves to travel, but we really enjoy going traveling around Europe and places that we haven't had chance to go to yet. So yeah, we don't have kids, so we have a lot of freedom to do that. So it's nice, you just go, kind of be a bit of a digital nomad if you want
Mhm.
to. So yeah, it's pretty
That's
nice.
awesome. Well, good. Well, how do people find you to learn more about what you do and if you can help them?
Yeah, I mean, we have our website, beardeninvestigations.com, and that would be a good way to get to all of our contact information. We have the usual social media that goes with all of that. Just give us a call or email me, mike@beardenonline.com. I'm happy to talk to you, even if you've got something that it's like, hey, I think I might have a need, but I'm not sure. I'm always happy to talk someone through that, and if we're not the right resource for you, I'll definitely point you to someone that is. But if there's something that we can help you with, then we'll help you kind of get that taken care of, in the most efficient manner we can. So yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for coming on today, Mike. And for all of our listeners out there, the contact information will be in the show notes. This has been another episode of the Success Partner Podcast. I'm your host, Daya Naef. Please like, subscribe, and stay tuned.